The Big Al Podcast with your host, Al Bishop, unfiltered and uncut.
Cool. We have the mighty chef, Norman Wessels, with us today. Just want to start by saying thank you very much. I know you FFM boys have got a very busy schedule. There's a lot of things happening, and just welcome and thanks very much for your time, man.
Oh, no problem, bro. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're awesome. What I like to do with a lot of the fighters, I know sometimes it gets documented quite nicely. Your actual story. I mean, obviously, we see you guys up in the bright lights, and only see a quarter of the story. So, if you can just take us back to where it all started for you. Obviously, there's a long connotation with yourself and Richie Kwan and FFM, but where did it all start exactly for you? The whole fight journey, as it were.
Well, my fight journey must have started in about 1999, and around about 2000. I was a busy rugby player. I was a career rugby player. I was building towards being a career rugby player. I broke my shoulder. In a rugby match, and things changed. The physiotherapist and the doctors and stuff stuffed up my shoulder, and then from there it became a case of what was I going to do with my life, because I missed a year out of training trying to recover from the shoulder injury. And at that time I got contracted to go play rugby at London Wasps. While moving to London, one of my best friends was there, working in a restaurant, and subsequently moved over there. At that stage, 1990 till about 2000, that's where all young South African men left overseas to go make their bones and try and find some work, because obviously absolutely no work options in South Africa, blah blah blah. Jumped on that boat, went over, started playing rugby. Absolutely hated the experience. Absolutely hated the rugby experience there, hated the style of rugby, hated the weather, hated everything. I was still young and impressionable, so I felt like I was being used, and I just, because I lost a lot of power in my shoulder, I just didn't have that edge, from a technicality perspective around rugby. Started working in a cellar, cleaning beer barrels and all that type of stuff, just trying to make ends meet. And still at that stage, I was like 125, 130 kilos, so rugby player.
So you're a professional scrum off then?
Yeah, professional scrum off. And just didn't have an outlet more than anything else. Sure. And basically what happened was, being a raucous rugby player, went out with mates, got highly under the influence, got hammered actually, and one thing led to another. Some Americans, hit my friend, and I just broke out into chaos after that. I ended up hurting, one guy quite a bit, got into a bit of trouble, and from there, as part of rehabilitation, anger management, whatever you want to call it, I needed to go work with underprivileged kids at Karim Safari's Muay Thai gym in Fulham.
Okay.
I needed to do X amount of hours there, but the moment I walked into that gym, it completely changed my life. At that stage, I was still doing a couple of MMA sessions here and there, with Morne Swanepoel when he was, obviously still operating out of Amans and Todi. Doing a couple of sessions here and there, but obviously friends from my neighborhood, did his classes and stuff, which was great, gave me a great platform and an idea of what it was. And then transitioned to Karim Safari's gym, which really gave me exposure to some hardcore motherfuckers, like really hardcore guys. French Moroccan, French Lebanese, North African dudes that grow up doing kickboxing and fighting for every little, inch in life. Sure. So I got exposed to that. Started doing Muay Thai, started loving it, graded to black belt. Spent a lot of time just in and around the gym. Started doing like inter-club, little competitions and stuff like that. One thing led to another. Before I knew it, I found myself in an MMA fight with with a big badass dude that knew what he was doing, and I didn't know what I was doing. So he whipped my ass, broke my arm, and and the injury I still carry today. So, but that opened my mind to the possibilities of MMA. So that's all that I was seeking at the time. During that time, there was two things I was pursuing. I was pursuing, art and creativity from a culinary perspective.
Sure.
And I found that intrinsically stimulating, and then from a martial arts perspective or MMA fighting perspective, which stimulated me physically as well.
Sure.
So the two combined each other very well. So as I was traveling with chefing and doing my degree in France and traveling around England and Europe and stuff, I was seeking out places to train and seeking different guys to train. And sometimes I would find myself in a boxing gym, and sometimes I would find myself in a wrestling gym, and sometimes I'd find myself in a Muay Thai gym or MMA gym. Wherever I was, I would find a space. And just started growing with the sport. Close to 9 years passed. Visas ran out, options ran out. I applied for a workers permit to go to France to continue my studies and to continue the work that I was doing in a specific restaurant called Hostellerie de Plaisance in Saint-Emilion, which was a 2 Michelin star restaurant at the time.
Sure.
So I really enjoyed that process and fighting, and I was just feeling like I was very stimulated at the time. And I was maturing and growing up, and everything was coming together for me. A visa got denied due to one application, piece of paper. I had to go back home, which I was going to do the application from there, but then realized when I got home how detached I was from my family and detached from my friends and stuff I was. And I've always been connected to Africa, and I've always been connected to South Africa, so the energy drew me back. Within a flash, I got a job when there was no jobs, apparently, at Southern Sun. Flew up to Southern Sun, Togo Sun head offices in Johannesburg. Within a day or two, they offered me a job. And, working for Southern Sun was a great experience from a corporate management environment. But then also to supplement that, I was looking for, something to do from a martial arts perspective. Yeah, just literally driving around in, Sunninghill, Sandton, Ravonia area, just looking for posters or banners, and sort of like spoken to the Crazy Monkey guys, Rodney and Nuno and those guys, chatting to a couple of other guys, just didn't feel the connect, just didn't feel the connection from, call it a spiritual side of things if you want. But then, I just saw a Taekwondo school sign, said, okay, cool, I'm just going to look in there, and then rode up in there, and it was a Saturday morning, quite ironically, and rocked up there, and all the Joburg heavies were there. And I didn't tell anybody who I was, didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I just literally sat there for like 2 hours watching this all unfold. And at the time, Rich wasn't there. He was busy with his studies and criminology and all that type of stuff. So, but all the other big heavy oats were there, and they were talking about their weekend and their Friday night and this fight and that street fight. And I was like, fuck. I'm not sure if
You're in the right place.
if I'm in the right place. So another guy walked in who sat with me as well, was also looking for an MMA gym to train. He had some BJJ knowledge and whatever. And we sort of like made a pact. We come in on Monday night, when the official Muay Thai class is. And obviously the Monday night changed my whole perspective from that side of things. And I met some very, very cool guys, Richard Brown, Alfie Shamali, Graham Cartmel, Kyra Hayworth, all the guys that we're still friends with today, and I've subsequently has evolved into the EFC. Met some very cool guys who we're still friends with today, and just started training. Rich obviously immediately saw that I had some sort of background or skill. We started chatting, just over time became friends, and somewhere along the line, because of the martial arts background I had, I went to Rich, which you don't often see in gyms today, and, fighters don't do that often, but I went over to Rich and I offered, bro, can I help to, clean the gym? Can I pack away pads? Sure. You need me to assist anywhere? Whatever help you need, let me know. It's just I want to contribute. And so eventually, one thing led to the other. So I got really involved in classes, and then I had a look how Rich was running his back house administration, if you could call it that at the time. He had like a black book with red tape. with a pen in it, and just happened to notice that, dudes weren't paying and being honest around training. So I was like, Rich, bro, you have like 50 dudes in your class, and only getting this much. How's that really working out for you? So I just offered to take care of that, and sort of like from a chefing experience and a kitchen administration perspective, just implemented some simple things, and there you are. So he's tripled his revenue within like a month, and putting some applications in and stuff. Nothing serious. And then obviously, things changed from a fighting perspective. A lot of little competitions were popping up, very insignificant stuff, very inconsistent. But fights were popping up. So all of a sudden, we had a Darren Daniel and a Simon Webb, and that wanted to fight, myself included, wanted to fight. So all of a sudden, that word spread around, and all of a sudden our school started growing, and got too much for that taekwondo school to handle. They kicked us out literally just like that. The next day we were out. Myself and Rich were sitting on the pavement. We were like, at December time, we're like, okay, cool, what are we going to do? It's like, well, let's find a space and let's do this, So eventually we find the dungeon at the Connecticut Nutrition Center, and no doors, no windows, like 80 square meters or something, put in the floor, whatever heavy stuff we could build, we built, and we built that school up to about 150 members over a short period of time. And it got to a point where we were on the verge of being kicked out there for making that place too busy, and people couldn't park and this and that, and it was just drama. And meanwhile, we were feeding that place.
Sure.
But it was exciting times. It was very raw. It was very authentic. We all knew that we just wanted to do martial arts. The focus wasn't fighting. The focus was just training as hard as possible, enjoying martial arts, doing fitness and conditioning, and do a little bit of this, a little bit. Training kids was great. It was a great time. I was still chefing full time. Richie was still studying full time. My career as a chef came to loggerheads. I was really starting to detach from, the corporate environment, and I started finding myself in a position where decisions were being made on my behalf that was out of my control completely, that weren't in the best interests of my future as a chef, be it career or creativity. So it was tough. I started struggling with that from morals and principles perspective, starting to detach from that, starting to detach from the work. Did some cool things, bought some restaurants, bought some hotels, went to different places, fixed restaurants up, and menu implementation was great. But then just got to a point where I got stuck at this one hotel, and I just found myself where I was babysitting 7 directors who wanted their bonuses every month, and 250 staff members who didn't really have any interest in growing and progressing, as, chef cuisiniers, but just were operating the system just like anybody else. But I just couldn't gel with it. I just couldn't connect with that. So I became a glorified babysitter, and I was just working all the time, babysitting staff, babysitting directors, and I wasn't actually cooking, and often than not, I would find myself in front of a plate of well-done cooked steak and mashed potatoes and green beans, or standing in front of a fucking breakfast buffet doing pork sausages and baked beans. So I was like, no, I didn't study for 5 years for this shit, and so one thing led to the next. Essentially what was happening, I got essentially more frustrated. And then I said, okay, this last ditch effort, I was going to make a change in the cooking industry, and started developing a protocol and policies handbook, training manual, and essentially call it a guideline to cooking for, African cultures, from that perspective. And that was going to pivot me to, at that stage, I got a job at Sun International to open up a hotel in Bangkok. Become the executive head chef of Sun International Santon, and then transition to Bangkok to open a hotel. That was going to be my next phase. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, behind my back, the decision was made that I was not going and doing this anymore, and it came to light that some guys made decisions in the sense of keeping me where I am, because if I was to leave, then that hotel wouldn't be...
Yeah, they'd have to start working.
So... And then one thing led to another, building on the training manuals, the assistant manager at the time, took that manual, which I asked him to proofread and stuff, took it him as his own, and then directed it to the manager. And then at that time, I got into a lot of trouble from the sense of I wasn't doing anything in this hotel, which wasn't true. So I was standing in this office with these 2 dudes, and got into a little bit of argument and tiff. Things got thrown out, people got pushed around. Essentially, I left. That was the last day I worked there. So a little bit of a scuffle. Last day I worked there, literally chucked my shit on the floor, said, "Fuck you, everyone. I'm out of here. Not dealing with this shit anymore." Drove down to the gym, said, "Rich, this is what happened. And do you want to do this full time?" He's like, "Yeah, let's do this." And at the time, the gym was making probably between 5,000 and 6,000 rand profit, a month, from all the stuff that we needed to do. So it was like baby steps. So I just thought, fuck this, and Rich just thought, fuck this. And we just started building it from there. And it was just a constant state of growth, progression, evolution, just wanting to be better. It was never about the fights, it was never about anything but just becoming better martial artists. And, and over the time, we obviously became best friends, and he became godfather to Bailey. And we obviously got to this place, a Kinetic Nutrition Center. A guy walked in called Damien, who we still work with now. Said, "Listen, I've got the space for you guys. Would you like to fill it?" Which is at Sunning Hill Village Mall now.
Sure. And
we've been there since 2008. And just evolved from there. We started that whole concept there, started training fighters, and then as we started winning here and there, more fighters started walking through our doors, looking for answers, looking for masculinity, looking for life, looking for jobs, looking for money, looking for anything just to find a way forward, just to do something. Of which Gaz was one of them. He was probably the first, walked through our door. We became best friends over time, and it's been a great experience. Myself and Rich, we sacrificed a lot, from our own resources and our own time to, get these guys grown up and get them fighting, competing. And a lot of guys have had success. And we've had a lot of success as a gym. And, this is pretty much where we are today. My MMA career has been pretty much just a natural progression. I've never been a career fighter. I've always just did it because I enjoyed the process of fighting. And I've always found fighting to be relatively easy to me. And I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed sharing the process with my best and closest friends. And, one win left to another win, hit some stumbling blocks in my life, which led to a couple of losses, learned from that, came back stronger, changed everything up, and my body and my mind is still changing when it comes to competition. My concepts around MMA has become very introspective, and less aggressive. There's always that malicious edge to it, in the sense of, that defining moment when you make a choice to, obviously hurt someone and finish a fight and win, and win decisively or lose decisively.
Sure.
So, that's where I'm still at. But there's just creating understanding around my body, my mind, and where I am. And I feel like I'm getting younger. I feel like I'm getting better. My body, I know my body better. So, obviously, the last year and a half or so has been very slow from a fighting perspective. But I've been busy.
Sure.
I've still been busy, active. Yeah, and pretty much here I am today with potentially the opportunity to fight for the middleweight belt, which I'm looking forward to, and I really hope it works out. But,
Cool.
There's a lot of factors that are out of my control, and I just got to be natural around that and accept it for what it is, and might happen, it might not happen. But I've got a lot of other stuff going on at the moment. So
Cool. I just want to go back to, you mentioned quite a bit about the success of FFM as a whole. So it's always nice to hear guys like yourself's story, because that in essence what you have described up to now is the dog days of MMA in South Africa. You know what I mean? It's the very raw roots of how most of this started, which is, I think, is a story that's gone untold for quite a long time. So it's such a cool perspective to hear that whole beginning, you know what I mean? Because even for people like myself, as a fan, we don't know those parts, you know what I'm saying? We don't know the stories. I mean, like you walk into a gym and there's every heavy under the sun is there, and you're kind of like, shit.
For example, one of the things I always like to revert back to is, fighters today, especially at the FFM, fighters today at FFM especially, they're very well looked after. They're a great bunch of guys, but they're very well looked after, and a lot of them come from the other side of the tracks and stuff, but they are very well looked after from a facility perspective, coaching, management, resources. All the fighters live and work in the gym.
Sure.
If they don't live at the gym, they live around the gym. So everything happens there. And one of the things that I like to revert back to is one of Darren Daniels' fights in the early days when he still fought in Durban. I mean, we were in a tent outside of a casino. It was storming outside, and we were warming up for the fight, and our feet and ankles were covered in mud, as we were like trying to get ready, for this fight. And obviously, D won that fight quite decisively. But which is a great experience. But it's all these little things. Rocking up, you're not going to fight. Like, for example, my fight against Joe Molise, which similarly, put me on the MMA scene, was Joe Molise at the time was 32-4 or something, and I was like 0-0-1. I was like still a baby in that perspective. And it was supposed to be like Arnie Williams. I don't know if you remember Arnie Williams. He used to run. He was probably the first guy. Like, everybody says a lot of bad things, or about Arnie Williams and stuff like that. But he was also just a guy trying to do something, you know. And he was the first guy to actually host relatively well organized events that were held at like casinos, in ballrooms and that type of stuff, and relatively looking after fighters quite well, and relatively paying fighters that were relevant to that time. But also, fighting was very fickle back then. So I was supposed to take part in this 8-man amateur competition. Then it became like a 6-man amateur competition, then a 4-man competition. And then it was like, there's no competition. Arnie Williams' opponent has pulled out. Not Arnie Williams, Joe Molise's opponent pulled out. Would you like to fight Joe Molise? And I was like, yeah, but isn't he like the South African champion or something at the time? And he's like, yeah, he's like 34. And I was like, And I was like, and I just looked at him, do you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, I think he can do this. I was like, okay, cool, let's do this then, So that's how it kicked off. And then obviously beat him decisively, and that's what, catapulted me, on the scene from MMA spectrum. And then I knew in what direction I wanted to move.
Sure.
But yeah, a lot of little things like that, which the youngsters don't have to filter through. And, I obviously always call them the older guys, or the old dogs, and I chat to Mart and some of the older guys, and they always seem amazed how fast, the youngsters are progressing. But I say to them, you know what, we've got this manual, this visual manual or mental manual of how MMA is today. We've filtered through 10 years of stuff.
Yeah.
We filtered through 10 years of bad competitions, fickle competitions, all these techniques that were relevant at the time that are not relevant today. And these guys have just got like this almost notes that they could use to crypt their competitions and stuff, which is great because it elevates them much faster. And then they will just pull us along in their slipstream, because we're obviously the first generation, the youngsters are the second generation, and they gain from all the knowledge that we have created and filtered through over the years. So yeah, there's a lot to consider around the dark days of MMA. It was really tough times, though. Really a job of passion,
Sure, 100%. Look, I think it's still a job of passion, but it's again, like I say, it's stories that have been untold for so long, and guys like yourself and Darren that you've given examples of have laid the path for the next generation. You guys kind of had to go through all of that, so they didn't. The youngsters are kind of, like you say, they've got an easier route now. They train a bit into the maybe Fight Star, from there into EFC, and there you go. You don't have to fight anybody in any tents.
Just look at it from a social media perspective. It's completely morphed into this thing that's almost out of control.
Sure.
It's out of control. Back in the day, we did Facebook.
Yeah.
Friend me.
Yeah. You had some black and white flyers going around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just onto that question. Obviously, during that time, there was a lot of guys around that were kind of trying to break into the MMA scene with gyms and stuff. What do you think it is that's made FFM so successful? Because obviously there were guys around at that time that had opened gyms and were kind of trying to, kickstart this whole MMA thing, where a lot of guys failed. What do you think it is that brought FFM to where it is now?
We've had a very strong sense of community and team at FFM, and the objective was just to train as much as possible, as hard as possible all the time, with zero emotional, mental, or physical consequence. That's just all we really did at the time. And we try to keep as much ego out of it as possible. And And like I said, it was we had a very progressive mindset, obviously due to the knowledge that we had at the time, but it was very progressive. We were always looking for an edge, little things like we were the first gym to actually walk out with a banner. We were the first gym for the fighter to turn around and face their corner as opposed to facing the opponent on the other side. Little things like that where we were ahead of the game. And we just always wanted to be one step ahead, and we really didn't focus on anybody else. We really didn't focus on what anybody else was doing, what anybody else was saying, and it was just a case of wanting to train as much as possible. And myself and Rich went on for 8 years, myself and Rich have been on this journey. We were trying to travel as much as possible, bring back as much relevant knowledge as possible, watching as much possible fights as we can, and trying to create an understanding from a stylistic perspective what MMA means to us. Studying opponents, studying footage, studying opponents, thinking of strategy, thinking of things that we could do, to the point where we've elevated ourselves now, where we don't really focus on other fighters. We really just focus on what we want to do, to be stylistically fluent, and just to be progressive, just to have more knowledge and grow around that. And the stigma, FFM has had a stigma around it for a very, very long time.
Sure, that's
very, 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 very long time. And it's because we didn't really have, a fuck you attitude. We've had an open door policy forever, forever. And we have welcomed the strangest cats through the doors who were looking for edge or were looking for something to do. Some guys stayed, some guys couldn't handle it, some guys felt, this is not for us. But at the end of the day, we trained extremely hard. And I'm not saying in the sense of we felt that we were training more than anybody else. We knew what we were doing, and we knew in the direction we were moving, and we were constantly testing from a conditioning perspective, mental perspective, nutrition perspective, skill set perspective. We were testing from a coaching perspective, we were testing from a team dynamic, we were exposing ourselves to professional rugby players, soccer players, cricket players, trying to get an understanding of how to create this team dynamic. And the team dynamic essentially became so strong that it created this image of being a gang, which was never, an image of what we wanted to give.
That's quite a cool topic. It's something I had in my mind. And I played quite a lot of team sport my whole life as well, and only really started training MMA in the last 2-3 years, but of boxing before that. And it made me realize a lot of things, the difference between sports. Because at the end of the day, MMA, in my mind, is like a weight cut, for example, is probably one of the most grueling aspects of sport in a whole that you'll ever have to go through. And just on that, let's talk about, for example, the scenario with Tumi-san. So exactly what you've said there makes so much more sense. So automatically as fans, when you first see it, you're like, jeepers, that's a little bit fucking unnecessary. If I'm honest, I'll set you straight now. But then I looked at it and I was kind of like, that's a bit crazy. But obviously there's always two sides to the story, and then there's exactly that point that you've just made. So, like you said, there's a bit of a stigma with FFM, and then I kind of think about it, but everyone sees a bad attitude on your behalf. But if you just stop and sit and look, because what I see is the ultimate team player. That's what I see. So your reaction is an act of passion for your teammate. You understand what I'm saying? So it's quite funny because a lot of people jump on it. And I asked a similar sort of question to Richie about that. Why do you think it's like that? And it's just people mistake your guys' passion and your guys' bond as a team for a single person sport as maybe arrogance or something else. But if I'm honest, when I first saw that incident with Tumi-san, I was like, geez, that's a little bit unnecessary. But straight after, that's the first thing that came to mind. But I'm like, you're looking at this in the wrong way. Because that's a man that is 100% committed to his team and 100% dedicated to his fighters. And that changes everything. And I think people, they see what they want to see, and they believe what they want to believe. So that scenario works quite nicely for me. It's a nice example to look at, like you said, on the stigma of FFM. The same with Shana. Obviously, look, the news broke in the wrong way. It kind of gave you there was some bullshit happening. I mean, there really wasn't. There was actually a greater problem. But everybody was like, oh, that's so unprofessional. It's this, it's that. And you kind of got to say, guys, but just give it a chance. You know what I mean? You're jumping on, because it's FFM, you're jumping onto it now and saying this and that when you don't really know what's happened. And it's a weight cut, which, I mean, someone like me can never understand what you guys have to go through to make these sort of weights and stuff like that. So I quite like that example of the focus around the team, and I don't think a lot of people understand that with FFM, is that it's the ultimate team. You know, obviously there's other gyms that are very close, but I think you guys wear your hearts on your sleeves, so it gets mistaken a lot of the time. You know what I'm saying?
The thing is, we like a long time ago, myself and Rich sat and we said, you know what, we've got this gym, we've got this community, we're doing all these classes, we're making this money out, and we were just sitting back and we were thinking, how can we create an environment where fighters can fight and train full time? Now, if you take into comparison all the other gyms there, who has a squad of 20 plus fighters that train full time?
Yeah, sure.
Full time.
You struggle.
Who's that? No one, you know, and that's not from an egotistical perspective. That's just purely from what we do on a daily basis. Now, the spin-off to that is you've got a group of 20 guys that are with each other 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, that are sharing every single waking moment, that are sharing all the bumps and bruises, that are sharing all the training methodologies, sharing all the frustrations, heartache, wins and losses together on a daily basis. We are all entwined for everybody's, you know, physical and emotional well-being, you know, and that's the ultimate goal. We do everything for the other person, you know, and if you are, like, for example, I'll use Igor Cabeza as an example. Igor Cabeza, great athlete, nice young man, but you know what led to his demise at FFM? He just didn't commit enough to his teammates. He was in it for himself. He was in it for himself when it mattered, and when the time came, like his closest friends needed to fight, he was nowhere to be found. You know, and that translates to him naturally moving out of the gym because guys came to a point where they didn't share with him. You know, where it is one hand wash the other. We are here to elevate you, so now you must pull us along. You know, we're here to, and then you get to this point where the guys are just so emotional about each other that, and the thing around that is everybody thinks nobody can pinpoint to a point of like how that person got absorbed into the community. Nobody can say, you know, JP's been there for 6 months. How can he be so, you know, entwined in the community? How can he be so close? How can he have such a good following? But that's the natural side of FFM. We've always had an open door policy. If you want to embrace MMA, if you want to embrace martial arts, you know, you'll have a place. If you want to work like we work, then you'll have a place here. And then within a week or so, you will be, it will feel like you've never been away. And you'll have the closest brothers that will literally pick you up when you're down, give you a smack when you get ahead of yourself, you know, and really carry you forward. And I think that's a big part of success. So we were one of the gyms that had a fully functioning team on a full-time basis, training all day, every day, 6 days a week, in each other's faces, sharing, caring, hating, just going through all the brotherhood lifestyles from that perspective. And I think that's what really put us forward above the other gyms. Because other gyms, they do great. Everybody has the knowledge. There's no code. You know, there's no secret code or anything like that. There's no secret manual. All the information is out there. How you adapt to it and how you understand it or create your understanding on it, you know, puts you forward. And the other gyms just didn't have that. You know, there were a couple other gyms that started getting little glimpses of it, you know, where they had 4 or 5 guys that were there full time. But if we had to look now, who is there?
Yeah.
If you had to honestly look now, who is there that operates on a full-time basis?
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. Obviously, there's a handful of gyms, but it still amazes me that there are guys competing in South African MMA that still have a 9-to-5 job.
100%.
It blows my mind. Look, I honestly, I'll take every cap I ever wear 100%. Off to those guys, but you cannot compete at the level we are at now.
Yeah.
Professionally still keep that 9-to-5.
You know, it becomes a percentage game, and that's also one of the things that I was always big about. Sure. You know, that myself and Rich were always big about, is that percentage game. How do we get that percent? How do we get 1%? How do we get that 1% ahead of everybody else? So you got guys that work full time. They'll get a couple of wins in the row, get, you know, elevated to some sort of contendership. But essentially, the guy that does the most hours, trains in the environment of the most quality fighters, with the most quality training, with the most quality coaching, is always going to have that percentage win over the other person. The averages, the odds are always going to be in your favor. And yeah, you'll never know what happens in a fight. You might beat an FFM guy, but you know what? Some youngster from some small mining town that does wrestling all his life, all of a sudden learns how to throw overhand rook, rocks your world and throws you completely out of contention. That's
Sure.
the nature of the game.
Yeah.
But essentially, I think FFM is like at 190 wins now, 40 losses or something.
Yeah, sure.
And if you had to take that from a statistical perspective and you had to backtrack and take it back to 10 years and you look at these little percentage increases, then that is only the mathematical point that we can get to. That's just how it is. It's got
Sure.
nothing to do with ego. It's just we've played the percentage game. We create an environment where fighters can live and train all the time. And we made it everything objective based, with the point being, if you want to fight at FFM, you must come with a knowledge of fighting overseas. You must know and must see that you want to fight overseas. We're not here, we're honest, we're not yes men, we're not here to entertain you in some way, where you walk off the street or you walk out of some other gym and now you want to come, I want to do EFC, and no. We first have to decide if you're the person that we want you. We can teach you all the skill in the world. We can give you the structure, the programming, the nutrition, the diets, the weight cutting. We can do all of that. But you have to be the right person. And I think we've taken the knocks over the years. We've aligned ourselves with certain people that didn't work out so well. We learned from that. And then the natural selection process evolved a little bit.
Sure.
And that's put us in a point where we've been fortunate, where our natural selection process has not given us the best athlete from a championship perspective. Besides for DeMart that came through our doors, we never really had other champions. DeMart's almost 10 years ago as well.
Yeah, sure.
We never had other champions that have walked through our doors that have been developed by someone else and now want to continue their championship progress. We've had guys that walk through the door and then over time progress to that level. But yeah, man. But that translates into an opinion or stigma about FFM. And, I'm a very emotional person, and most of us are emotional people. And
Sure.
when we get invested, like, when I stand on the other side of the fence, I feel like I'm fighting and I feel like I'm willing to fight. And if something's going to happen, regardless of what the situation is, regardless of what the social media backlash is going to be, I am going to go over there and
Sure.
protect my teammate, just like
Absolutely.
they would do for me, and then I would rationalize to the point, okay, cool, I'm not really going to pull anybody's ears off, but I'd rationalize to the point of, we are at this level, we
Yeah.
need to do something about this.
Sure.
And, that's where most of us are, and that's where most of the corner men are. I just respond on different platforms than most other guys, and Rich responds differently, and Chad responds differently, and Boyd responds. But ultimately, when it comes to that point of action, we're all willing to do whatever it needs to take from that perspective.
Sure.
And that's from a morals and principles perspective. That's not from, once again, not coming from a point of ego or anything. That's like literally protecting one of our own.
Sure. Yeah, I get it 100%. Like I say, obviously, it's people react too emotionally as well at the end of the day. If it was someone from another gym, we would have said, cool, whatever, you would have moved on. It's just one of those things. But it's when you're at the top, everybody's looking up,
100%.
So that's the way it goes. I just want to focus on yourself now personally. Obviously, from heavyweight to light heavyweight and now to middleweight.
Yeah.
What is the reason, firstly?
It's just, spiritual, mental, physical evolution. I feel that's the stage where I am, and I've been following a plant-based diet for a long time now, and my body's changing. My body's changing, and I need to accept the change. I also felt like, the fighters in the light heavyweight division, have been a bit lackluster, and to go and fight Dolce again was very uninspiring.
Yeah.
Very,
100%.
very uninspiring. Nothing against him. He has gone and eked out a few wins in exactly the same format he's done in the past. He's never really knocked out anybody. He's never really decisively finished anybody besides one or two guys at his level, 5 years ago. But if we look at the fights that he's fought, if I had to look at it from a strategic perspective, all I needed to do was increase my punch frequency by about maybe 10 or 15%, stuff 50% of takedowns, and avoid an overhand right, then I'd win on points. And from that perspective, that wasn't very interesting to me. That's not what fighting is about for me.
As a fan as well, like, to be honest, for me, it's a fight that would have done nothing for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
100%.
it's you're in that position where you're at the top, and it's kind of like you could say to Dolce, if you want to fight me, then go and show it. You know what I mean?
100%.
Don't grind out 5 rounds. Knock somebody out. Finish somebody. Show me that you want that fight.
It's all fun and games at the end of the day, because I had a few chats with him on a personal level, and I was like, listen, bro, if you wanna fight me, then you actually have to, really make me worry.
No, sure.
You have to make me fucking worry.
Sure.
Like, you need to make me fucking worry. Like,
Sure.
shit, this guy's gonna fucking rip my head off.
Yeah.
But actually, you're not doing that, and he's become so complacent around how to win that he would do the absolute safety type of fight just to win on whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And, he might have changed his haircut. He might have not be so pompous. He might have changed his gym from Quinton Chong. But at the end of the day, he's still surrounded by yes men, pushing him in a direction, to fight. And he's driven by the belt, and the ego. He's driven by ego and the lust for the belt, and I don't find that interesting at all. I don't find it, like, I need to bond with a fighter. I need to connect with a fighter. There needs to be something where we can, on a platform that we can connect on, whether it be hate, morals, principles, or to a point. I like to feel scared. I like to feel like, fuck, this guy's really gonna rock my world. And I just got into a position where, the guys that I was supposed to fight in EFC started lining up fights for me, then the guys just didn't pan out.
Sure.
And lo and behold...
Broken pinky toes.
Yeah. Lo and behold, here's Dolce again. And now Dolce's like outside my door and in the middle of the night, making videos. I don't even know what the dude said.
Nobody knows what he said.
Yeah, it's like, if you want the belt, take the belt, bro. Then get to events and he's eyeballing me. I don't care. It really doesn't. It just doesn't interest me. So, and the fact of the matter is, when we fought, I beat him decisively.
Sure.
Nobody else has done that.
Yeah.
I beat him decisively. He hit me the hardest he could hit me. He threw me the hardest he could throw me, and he still couldn't finish the fight. When he threw me on my head, I couldn't move my neck after that fight for like 4 weeks. When he threw me on my head, he was punching me in the face, and he was on top of my head. I was sitting on my bum. He's punching in my face. I could feel, to this day, I could still feel his whole body tensing as he was trying to hit me. And I still hear Quinton Chong, hit him! And he was like tensing and he was hitting. And I was feeling the shots. And I was in my mind, I was like starting to pick up a rhythm from his punches. So I was like, 1 Mississippi, next punch, 2 Mississippi, next punch. Then I started setting up my sequence and I knew, okay, cool, I'm going to stand up. And then once I stand up, I'm going to finish the fight. And that's what happened. He fell into my sequence and he got to a point where he realized, okay, I just hit him the hardest I could possibly hit him. I just threw him the hardest I could possibly throw him, and it's not over.
Yeah, sure. And he's still standing.
So, and then he gave up. And, he can say what he wants. That joke was never on.
Yeah.
He tapped out because he didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
So he can say anything he wants.
Sure.
He can say anything he wants. But if he wants to break it down to his masculinity and why he gave up.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, he would have given me his teeth. If he really wanted to win, he would have given me his teeth. He would have given me his nose. He would have given me his throat. He would have sacrificed all of that. But he didn't.
Sure.
So now he wants a mulligan. It's not going to matter. Anyway, and obviously, one of my close friends and training partners, Chad, was doing really well. And, like I said, my vision around MMA has become very introspective. And, I wanted Chad to have more options. It was important for him to have more options. And obviously, Chad is a, supreme athlete. And, we can all aspire, to live the life that he leads when it comes to being an athlete, an MMA athlete. And I just wanted to, give him some space to do what he needed to do.
Sure.
And that was that. And I had a chat to Kyron there, possibly relinquish the belt, and like all the guys, the potential guys who were supposed to fight just didn't pan out. They all lost. And that's just how the game works. So I just found myself in a little stalemate scenario. And then obviously the things that, Yannick Behani came on the scene.
Sure.
I've met him a few times at some of the UFC events. Some of the things that he said really rashed me, really grated me. It really bothered my core being, and that's what I enjoyed. You know, and I enjoyed that. I was like, okay, this guy's really going to grow on me, and through the natural progression of things, it's going to happen. And so obviously Michiel, owned him, and he can say whatever he wants, but then, and then after Michiel beat him, I was like, okay, I'm not interested in this anymore.
Yeah.
I love Michiel, and we've been in the game for a long time, and we've always had a couple of beers after the fights, and I was really happy for Michiel. I was like so happy for him and what he achieved, and coming there and pulling the trigger. For us older guys, it's really important,
sure.
and I really appreciated that moment, and I really loved him being successful in that front. But from a morals and principles perspective, I was like, Yannick got taught a lesson already. So what's the point? So one thing led to another, and fights came on, and all of a sudden Yannick won 1 or 2 fights, and I became this hero again. I was like, okay, cool. So this guy's like really creeping back into my life, and cool, let's make this happen. And just out of a process, not even considering any fights, living a plant-based diet, my body started changing, my weight started changing, and before I knew it, I was like under 100 kilograms, eking about at 97 kilos without even trying.
Okay.
In doing powerlifting and doing a lot of mobility, flexibility stuff, and training as well. So that's been very exciting. So the math made sense to me. So if I lose, I can cut 10% of water, I'll drop 3 kilograms of muscle, and my bone density is this much, my organ weight's that much. So everything was... So if I just had to do it from a mathematical perspective, then I could do it.
Okay.
So I went through the whole point of planning performance-based. Obviously the weight change made a difference in the sparring environment. Guys were loving the fact that I was becoming a little bit smaller. And now all the boys were having a go, which made things fun.
So there was a lot of exciting happening.
So, but I still fight dirty, so it doesn't matter. That's just basically where we're at with that. But at this present moment in time, I'm just enjoying the journey, enjoying the evolution, and that's the next step. That's the next step for me. So fight aside, that's the next step.
Cool. Just on Yannick Behati, I was there when you went in and announced, and I mean, even from there, it was pretty clear to see he was very uncomfortable. I don't know how much he really wants that fight. I'm hoping he does. And then obviously he came out with a premeditated, everybody's on steroids. He's been obviously watching the Diaz brothers.
Says the ex-bodybuilder, 120 kilograms. Yeah, ripped to shreds.
It's kind of like pot.
That's very natural.
It's kettle. It's very strange. What would you say to that? I mean, obviously it's bullshit talk. He's trying to run, but does that fuel you a little bit more? Is it kind of just in one year out the other? Yeah,
it's just in one year out the other. That was just dumb. I just thought he was dumb.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a dumb comment. I just thought, I got in the ring and I just said to him, what, I'm put here for opportunities like this, and I'm put here to do these things, to finish guys like you.
Sure.
And I said to him, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for you. And he's like, why are you sorry for me? I said, I'm really sorry that it has to end this way for you. And it's just I'm put here, and unfortunately I'm here, whether you like it or not. You can try and look past me, but
Sure.
I'm not going anywhere. You've put yourself in this position, and I'm next. So, so it's whether he wants the fight or not. And so he was picking fights with Chad and picking fights with Drickus, and then obviously the whole steroid thing. I'm not sure how that rationally makes sense, but I just had a laugh about it. Anyway, and Boyd and the boys teased him quite a bit backstage about all those type of comments. But it is. He did look very uncomfortable. But I don't read into those type of things.
Yeah.
I don't try and read into much or try to make assessments, on people's body language at that present moment in time, because the next thing you could walk out of the cage and you could get like a cue and you could be the most motivated person under the planet. I just needed him to feel that my presence was there.
Okay.
And whether he chooses to take it or not, it could be out of his control completely. But I'm there. And as long as he knows that I'm there, that's what mattered. At that moment, that's what mattered. Because, he can say what he wants, he can act like he wants, but, you can have this championship or champion mentality where he wins or loses regardless, but they could also be blind talk, just saying things to himself just to get him through the day type stuff. And but at the end of the day, it's not just myself. I'm here, FFM's here, if it's not me, it's going to be it's not me, it's going to be someone else.
Look, I also on the other side, I commend Bahati quite well to get starched like he did and come back and put in the performance he did. Yeah. To come to a crowd in a foreign country, everybody's going to be... That's what I see. Yeah, sure.
So that's what I see. And, I look at fights much differently to most guys. Everybody, focus on the social media stuff and focus on the back and forth banter and the interviews and stuff. But I try and look at the dark spaces. I try and look at the things, how guys finish fights. I try and look how guys are backstage, when they're sitting and getting ready for a fight. I try to feel that energy. I try to see their processes, and I try to create an understanding. At the end of the day, he came in there with a point to prove, and he proved his point, which is a lot of how my fights have finished. And that interests me. So, but like I said, everything else aside, he came in there and he did the job, and he did a job quite well. He's an athletic specimen. Behind the scenes, we've always had, good conversations, UFC, wherever. We've spoken about, we've swapped information about fights and stuff like that in the past. Obviously, those things have changed since the environment has changed. He came with a different attitude this time, and I like that. Sure. I like that. That's very motivating for me.
Then, let's say hypothetically that fight happens, you win, you take another belt. What's on the other side of the door for Chef?
On the other side of the door, we've everybody's throwing the UFC card out there, and everybody's talking to UFC, and everybody's doing this type of stuff. On a personal perspective, I've never had any ambition to go fight overseas. I didn't feel that was my natural path. I felt that, I was the team leader. I was there to fight and compete and look after my guys and, be in the mix of things, to make it happen from a team leader maturity, type sense. And fights and winning of fights came natural. And obviously, around last year, around my last fight, the natural progression was now, to transition to something else. And I spoke to UFC about going to UFC. And the irony is, my first application to UFC got denied because of my loss to Ron Potts. Okay. And, 6 years before, I think.
Yeah. It's a long time already.
Yeah, a long time ago. I think it was like 37 years, 29 or something. And, and Joe Silva basically said, you're a very exciting fighter. We really love to have you, but because we lost to Ruan Potts, you need to fight better guys.
Sure.
100% understand. And then I explained to him my current situation and things that I've went through, but I also didn't want to fish too much. I said, okay, cool. That's your decision. This is where I'm in my life. This is what I achieved. This is my body changed. My mind changed. These are the things that I've done. Okay, great. And then once we got overseas with the UFC, the whole prospectus around that changed. We got to talk to Joe, we got to talk to Tom Wright, we got to talk to Sean Shelby and all those guys, sure. And not just from our perspective, but exposing them to South African MMA. Making them understand. Telling them about guys like Trickus and telling them about guys like Chad and everybody and all the youngsters that really stand out. We've got the talent. So it was another case of, so I started communicating to Tom Wright, who does the light heavyweights and all that type of stuff. And Tom Wright's like, as soon as you're done with UFC, we'd love to take you on board for the North America scenario for some fights and stuff. And then obviously the lag time to finish this last fight with the UFC has been taking quite a long time. And then I just sort of like put it on the back burner. I was like, I'm just going to compete, do BJJ at this present moment in time, get my black belt, try and get my South African colours in powerlifting and be the best martial artist I can be. What everything else happens must be natural. I don't want to force it in any way. I don't want to, squeeze to try and get the juice out. It must come naturally to me. So that's just been where I've been around that. And just recently now, one of the friends that I've developed over the time, on the UFC circuit, traveling around with Gareth, forwarded me Tom Wright's details, who asked them to forward their, his details to me directly. Okay. So yeah, we've just sort of like started our communications, but then, UFC got sold. UFC got sold to WME IMG, and I sort of saw what the whole UFC environment was changing into.
Yeah.
And once again, from who I am as a person, it started to become less appealing. It would have been glorious from that perspective to go fight at the UFC, but then to see how some of the content of the fighters have become quite cheap, and quite shallow.
Yeah. It's almost like a lot of analogies we keep hearing is that it's an entertainment company now, and they're veering way more towards entertainment and away from the actual fighting itself, which is going to be very interesting.
So that became just less appealing from that perspective. And once again, I had to, just sit back and think about, what I wanted to achieve and where I can really offer value as a person. So for this present moment in time, the goal is just to get as much knowledge as possible, and just have an understanding that, fighting comes naturally to me, competing comes naturally to me. It's something I've been doing since I've been 4 years old. And if I needed to click into that, whether it be Yannick Bahati or going overseas, that'll be cool, but at the end of the day, I still need to be in the best shape possible for my teammates, be in the best shape mentally possible for my teammates. Last year, I was trialing and testing some scheduling things, being a single dad, with Bailey makes things quite complicated.
Sure.
From a logistical perspective. I don't get to do as much in the day. Don't get to do as much in the day as I want to do from a training perspective. I'm still training between 3 and 4 hours a day, which is still a lot.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of things that I wanted to do. So I chopped up my schedule, 30 minutes there, 15 minutes there, 30 minutes there, 15 minutes there. Sort of like, trying to get the best quality out of certain sessions. But essentially what happened is I started disconnecting from my teammates, started disconnecting from my friends, because I wasn't there to start a session, but I also wasn't there to finish a session.
Okay.
We all sign out, we all give each other high fives and hugs when we finish sessions, and, just to appreciate each other but I wasn't there anymore. So I created a little bit of a disconnect from that perspective, and obviously I built a little bit of resentment around that. But then I needed to understand for what it was. I wasn't there for the start. I wasn't there for the finish. The middle is not important, And was I doing it for my own personal development? Was I doing it for my team development? Obviously, I wasn't doing it for my team development. So I needed to go take a step back, and I had some very heart-to-heart conversations with some of the fighters that, isn't what most men want to hear. And them giving me the honest feedback, and I need to draw back. So now rebuilding on top of the other things, cut some things out that were irrelevant, which I thought were relevant. But for now, just getting the best shape I possibly can, to be the best teammate I possibly can, and add value where I can. And I trust in my instincts and my skills and my mentality that if the time comes, for whatever call it is, that I'd step up to the plate and make the good fight happen and fight the good fight. I just got to remember that it's not about ego, it's about the good fight. Sure. Walking out of that fight, win or lose, knowing that you're a better fighter. And also saying that when it comes to opponents, not choosing opponents because I want to fight. That's not the case. That person really has to elevate me. That person really has to. I've come to terms with losing, and I've come to terms with understanding, what it is around losing and the growth mindset that you need to have. You need to invest in losing. So just as much as you invest in winning. So, and I just said, if that fight comes, then I will be willing to invest. But it needs to elevate me, because that investment needs to pay off.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think you're at the pivotal point of South African MMA. So if somebody wants to get that fight, they in essence need to earn it. That's the way I see it. So there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, like Bahati, it's a great fight from every perspective you look at it, it's a great fight. So I really hope he takes it. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles it, because from what I've seen, he looks very nervous already. You know what I mean? So whether that nervous energy kind of motivates his training or kind of motivates him to look somewhere else, we wait and see.
Look, at the end of the day, I always look at it as the case of either fighting a complete warrior that's willing to sacrifice everything and die in the cage, or it's like fighting a wounded tiger that's got his back against the wall, that knows he's going to die and he's got nothing to lose. So that's the constant, the two things that I always tussle with and fight with, from a spiritual perspective when it comes to fights. So I try and, always be in that realm of understanding.
Yeah.
So I don't look down on Yannick Bahati on the end of the day. If he rocks up, he rocks up. If he doesn't rock up, it'll be an easy fight, and then I'll just have to look back at for what it is. So
100%. The next question I want to just throw out there involves Gareth.
Yo.
So when I picture Gareth walking out to any fight you've seen, on the right hand side is you. Obviously, going through your process, being the team member that you are, keeping him motivated, telling him things he needs to be, and just where there's him, there's you.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously now there's the separation for whatever reason. I'm not too worried about the reasoning.
Yeah.
What I want to understand is what is it like now? Has it been a massive adjustment from your side personally, to kind of, in the gym without him, and obviously there's a massive sense of pride for you guys, where you guys, yourself and Richie and Gareth, to a point, obviously have taken this guy from raw and uncut all the way to the biggest stage possible. What has it been like, obviously, without him, let's say?
No, he's my best friend.
Sure.
We love him, I love him, and it's been lonely, and it's been tough. Me and him were sort of like, at the time, were the bastions of the FFM hierarchy, and things have changed in that perspective, which I've accepted. But it's difficult not having that other best friend. It was essentially me, Gareth, and Rich.
Sure.
And Gareth had certain traits and things, that made, friendship with him complicated. But that was part of Gareth. We accepted him for everything that he was, and the same, he accepted us. And somewhere along the line, things changed. Myself and Gareth, I can't even begin to quantify the experiences we've shared and the time on the mat we've shared, and, the death of his best friend, the death of my partner, Katie Shea, and the things that we've shared from that perspective, and the places we fought from, and being down and out on our knees, and then, pulling each other back up, and all of a sudden it's just become this... Fuck, I don't even know, bro. I honestly don't even know how it all came to how it all aspired. All of a sudden this thing about UFC just became so overriding and so important that it just superseded all of us, and where it was never a case of that. Myself and Rich are like, we fight the good fight, we tell the stories, we tell the war stories, and we share it with our kids. That's what it's about. UFC or not, anything or not, and it's very hard sore. It's very, very hard sore. It's very, very hard sore, and I'm not sure. I'm just not sure what's going on in his mind. Myself and Rich, especially myself, just want to give him the space to work through what he needs to work through, and 100%. Maybe somewhere along we can have a laugh about it. We had very high expectations for Gareth, and sometimes we were very hard on him, but also being hard on him has simply made him most affluent fighter in MMA, South African history, MMA history, and somewhere along the line, he became the source of MMA success, which was never the case. We always work together. Just like it takes a village to raise a child, it's the same thing when it comes to a fighter. The amount of hours we laid awake, the amount of hours, we sacrificed because we loved each other, because we were best friends. You know, we sacrificed. Yes, we didn't get in the cage for him, but were we ready to get in the cage with him? Yes. You know, and the other lady asked me the other day, you know, but essentially it's the fighter that gets in the cage in the fight. So I said to her, but let's quantify it. So if Gareth gets in the cage and fights a 15-minute fight, how much more hours has he put in than me to get to that point?
Yeah, sure.
15 minutes. If the fight lasts that long. So just from that perspective, and it's never a case for me, it's a case, but I've done this much for you and I've done that much for you. It's just a case of, you know what, we were best friends. We traveled together, we trained together, we fought together, we cried together, we had kids together. And, you know, and my daughter and his daughter were quite good friends, like really, really good friends, like partners in crime. And to see that not evolve and blossom is very hard sore. And, you know, never really saw eye to eye with his wife from a MMA perspective. Very little do we see eye to eye with wives and girlfriends when it comes to MMA perspective. But, you know, She was a great mom. She was a great person from that perspective. You know, she held the ship down. And, you know, and similarly when I was going through my troubles, they were very supportive, and I'm very appreciative for that. But it's just, I just don't understand how it got to this point of now we're just not talking. You know, we had a conversation in a coffee with this guy, and he told us that, you know, he wanted to open up his own gym. Great. That's what we've been telling you for the last 5 years to do. He wants to spend time with Oakley and do some work with them. He's got some good business deals in place. Great. That's what we told you to do. You know, and then he doesn't want to fight anymore. Great. If that's what you want to do, who cares? You know, fuck. Let's just do martial arts and travel and just share the knowledge and mentor the youngsters and see how they flourish and, you know, just see all these things grow. And then we can have a beer and have a lach, and our kids can grow up together, and we can tell jokes around the campfire about all the stupid things we've done.
Sure.
And yeah, the next day, yeah, Gareth has left FFM and no longer associated with FFM, no longer talking to the guys. And yeah, it left a very big void because, and especially from the younger fighters, there was a large feeling of resentment.
Sure.
Because everybody was so entwined and so engaged and so invested into Gareth, and for Gareth, and everybody put everything else aside. We got to get Gareth to the UFC. We got to get him to perform. We got to get him to do the right things. We got to get him to honor himself and to honor South Africa and to honor, you know, the opportunity that he has. You know, and then all of a sudden it was just gone. It's just gone.
Yeah, geez, it's a tough scenario. You know, Richie obviously said a lot of similar things, and I kind of gave my perspective on the situation, which I can touch on again. Look, I think my thing is personally from an MMA fan, if I watch on a whole international MMA, guys change gyms, and I think that's a natural evolution.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a little bit more invested with you guys, but I don't know. The way I see it is like this, okay? And it all, as much as it doesn't seem like it, for me it does seem like it. So it's a loyalty thing. You understand what I'm saying? So the actual loyalty to you guys and your friendship is perhaps what's driven him, you know, to do things the way he's done. Like the loyalty has kind of said to him, I don't know the right way how to explain this to you, and I don't know the right words to say this is what I want to do, and I don't know how, you know, the loyalty and fear is going to make his mind think, you know, if I say this to you, it's maybe going to offend you, and that's what I don't want to do. So the easiest way for me to do is just to go. That's the first part. The second part for me is, if you look at any fighter's career, I mean, with all due respect, guys like yourself and Gareth are maybe in your peak and in your prime with not too many years left. So decisions have to be made for longevity. And I think, I don't know, look, I know very little about the situation, but in my mind, to me, it seems like it's the last roll of the dice. you know, to be training with guys with UFC experience, to be sparring with guys with UFC experience, to just sharpen that little bit extra of skill where he perhaps maybe feels that he is not getting enough sparring partners, let's say, of a high level to take him to that point. Look, obviously there's yourself he's got, but you're 1 in a million in South Africa. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you.
Sure.
You know, from a loyalty perspective, we also, you know, we big on natural progression. But the thing that is really concerning for myself and Rich is, you know, Gareth is not training overseas.
Yeah.
He's not training with other UFC fighters. So what is he doing to honor himself in the sense of actually sharpening those edges? You know, so that just makes myself to believe that there's something else is going on. And it's not just FFM is not enough. You know, if he didn't want to say that FFM was not enough, then yes, I would understand. If he didn't want to say that because he's loyal, who's scared of the consequence or whatever the case is, you know, obviously we'll take a shot to the nuts or whatever the case is, because it's been a long journey. But you know, and if he didn't want to say that, he could have get someone else to say it, you know. But the point being is, he's not doing anything at this present moment in time to elevate himself, you know. And I understand the social media responsibilities that he has,
Sure.
and the sponsorship responsibilities that he has. But, you know, if I look at Gaz now, I'm like, fuck, Gaz, you are running out of time. You know, you need to perform.
Sure.
You need to get on a plane. You need to go overseas. Go to AT&T. Go to Montreal and go do your thing. You know, but there's two sides to a story, which makes me believe that it's personal. You know, there's something that has happened that we can't explain. But also now that we're a couple of months down the line now, there's been so many things that have come out now in the sense of his reasoning behind it, which is just like, it's just sounding like he's trying to validate to the people that are providing him with something, you know, to validate his decision. But yeah, he's got a fight coming up, and I hope, you know, that he's done the work. I hope he's done more.
Sure.
I just hope he's done more. I just don't hope when he gets on that plane he feels like he didn't do enough. You know, and I'm not concerned about the outcome of the fight. I'm not concerned about winning or losing. I just want him to get on that plane and know that he's done enough, and he's done more, and he's done more than he's done before. Am I egotistical around the sense that we were not enough? Could it possibly be that? I'm actually quite impartial around it.
Okay.
You know, I'm quite impartial around it because, you know, Gaz has got a lot at stake. And I think there's a whole sequence of events that, you know, led to this decision. There was a whole strategic decision that was made that led to this decision for him to move on and stuff. But we've also got a few other guys that have trained overseas and experienced overseas things and experienced overseas gyms. And, you know, our theories are tried and tested, and we keep doing what we're doing. It would have been nice for Gareth to tell us if it was something personal, so we wouldn't make that mistake with the youngsters if there's anything to do. But yeah, I completely agree with what you had to say. But it's just so vague and so confusing at this moment that myself and Rich just have to pull ourselves back and say, okay, just let it moment. But, you know, am I heart sore because I'm not talking to my best friend? Yeah, of course I am. You know, Rich, you know, feels the same way, and we tried talking to him, and it's just completely cut off. And, you know, Gareth's got a very, you know, complex family dynamic, you know, outside of his own household. Very complex family dynamic, and I don't think we really fit into that anymore, and is what it is, man.
Yeah, sure, man. Gee, we got a bit deep there. Well, I hope for your guys' side personally that eventually gets sorted out, because it's never cool stories to hear. And yeah, I mean, guys like yourself and Gareth and Richie are imperative to South African MMA. You know what I mean? So we need you guys operating on all cylinders for the future of the sport, you know. And the reality is, at the end of the day, you know, like it's one of those weird things. Someone leaves, someone else comes in. You know, the the next Soldier Boy could be walking through the ranks of FFM already. You know, it's the sad reality of what's going on is that we can't harp on about it from a business sense and an MMA sense. You've got to kind of just carry on with the job. Obviously, the personal side is always going to sting. 100% it's going to sting, and I hope somewhere along the line you guys figure that all out.
I reckon it's just going to be a situation of we're going to bump into each other somewhere, and we're probably just going to start laughing and think, you know what, you're a puss, I'm a puss. So
sure.
There's such a funny situation. You want to go for a beer and then it's over.
100%. Obviously now you guys at FFM have got a serious crop of youngsters there. It seems at the moment, obviously there was another signing, Armand, who's come over there, very talented youngster. You've got a lot of guys flocking. They're coming there for a reason, understandably so. We saw Don Madge move. We've got a lot of youngsters coming through. You know, what do you think it is that's driving that? Obviously, besides the fact that everybody's looking for the best facility available to them and they're being drawn to FFM, but do you think there's other characteristics besides that the youngsters are after that are coming to you guys?
You know, the youngsters are exposed to way more accessibility than what myself and Gareth and Martin and all those other guys were. Yeah, there was always opportunity to fight overseas, but it was never really relevant because we just could never get there.
Sure.
But the youngsters now have so much more resources available to them that the vision around MMA is changing. You know, the vision around South African MMA is changing. You know, the youngsters are realizing now that, you know what, maybe the future's not on this continent.
Sure.
It would be a different story if we had like 5 promotions, you know, operating here at EFC's level, you know, and we really had opportunity for choice, leverage, TV exposure, sponsorships and all that type of stuff. But let's face it, you know, sponsorships are still few far in between from a local level. And
just to butt in there, I always have a conversation about sponsorships because from what I see from an outside perspective is there's a lot of product sponsorship and not enough monetary sponsorship. You know what I mean? It's like, here's 50,000 kgs of protein. You're like, thanks, I appreciate it, but bills have got to be paid, man.
Still 90% like that. You know, there's a couple of fighters, they do really well for themselves, that are very strong business minded. And then there's like probably 80% of the fighters that still undersell themselves, which essentially undersells the whole MMA community.
Sure.
But yeah, the whole vision around, you know, MMA on this continent is changing. And the allure of fighting overseas is becoming more romantic and more accessible.
Sure.
You know, the glamour and the glory of fighting at Bellator and at Risen and at ONE FC and you know, UFC has become more prolific, and that has given us a bit more leverage from that sense, because fighters are sort of like, you know, just peering past the EFC curtain right now and just looking at whatever else is behind the curtain there, you know, and they realize they haven't even touched the surface. And like I said, a lot of things at EFC are changing. Still the number 1 promotion on the African continent, doing a great job, but there is still a little bit more out there, you know, and the fighters need to be exposed. And fighters need to go overseas, you know, pay their dues, become mercenaries, you know, rock up, fight, win, lose, get the dollars, come back, you know, get that experience, and then, you know, plan the next adventure. So, and I think also what's happening now is with our team that's growing a little bit bigger, you know, our network of communication is becoming more honest. Okay. You know, before it was a select few of like 5 guys saying, no, come train at FFM, try it out, you know, you'll enjoy it, it's something different, you know, the environment's different, you know, you got Rich and Chef there. Rich is an amazing coach, you got Chef there who's a team leader, you got this going on, Chad, Boyd, doing great, you know, be exposed to this type of stuff. So, you know, guys would actually sit with a friend that's training out of Cape Town or training out of Durban and say, listen, I'm there, you got to come.
Yeah, sure.
You know, before it wasn't like that. You know, if you have, and the guys were saying, like, if you have ambitions to fight overseas, this is the only gym that can get you there. You know, if you want to be a successful fighter, you need to be surrounded by the largest concentration of high-quality fighters you can find. And once again, it poses the same question. How many other gyms are out there? We can look at CIT. You know, Morne is a very good friend of mine and Rich, and we always have a laugh together. But you take that environment, you know, and how many long-term sustainable athletes they have created. Leon has fell a bit from grace. Michiel fell a bit recently, you know, fell a bit from grace. But Dricus has got his mind screwed on right, moving in the right direction, playing the right game. But that's one guy. You know, that's one guy out of a whole stable of guys where sitting on 5, you know, at the moment that we've been developing. So, yes, what do you have? You have FFM, you have CIT. Who else do you possibly have? Yeah. Who else? I'm not saying there's bad MMA gyms out there, but if you look at it at a numbers perspective and a percentage perspective, who else is literally there? I wish it was a case of like America where we had 20 gyms with 50 pro guys.
Yeah, it's important. It's an important part, you know what I mean? Because my next thing is, as FFM, eventually you're going to get to a point where you can say, a fighter wants to come to you and say, look, I've got another 12 middleweight fighters. We can't take you on. You know what I mean? We can't have so many fighters from one division fighting under one roof, because someone's going to suffer. You know what I mean? So it's that gym development is a big one. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's the natural. And it's what I wanted to ask you. What do you think's lacking in South African MMA? Because obviously the big one is more gyms like FFM and CIT that have a big stable of fighters. And why do you think it is that that's not happening?
Look, you know, if I have to look from, you know, hindsight, there was a pivotal point in my life, in Rich's life, where we literally sat back, sacrificed everything, gave up everything, and said, from this point forward, this is what we're doing. A lot of fighters, a lot of gyms out there, a lot of coaches out there are struggling. You know, 90% of MMA gyms fail, and that's a reality, because gyms get built around the business of fighting, and the business of fighting is fickle. You know, fighters are fickle unless they're really wholly and solely committed to a cause of excellence and growing a gym and contributing back to the community, which we are fortunate to have at FFM. But coaches are not, you know, financially able to take 20 fighters on board, coach them all day, every day. A lot of coaches out there still have full-time jobs, just like anything else. You know, and now all of a sudden they have to try and make it, you know, run their gym with maybe 50 community members that does a little fitness class or whatever the case is, and does a little BJJ class, and then has a stable of 3 fighters that possibly fight 1 to 1.5 times a year, you know, get 25% of their 15,000 Rand fight purse, and now need to make a living. So eventually you might as well work in a cafe or a corner store, you know. So but the fact of the matter, the direction that myself and Rich and FFM are moving in is, you know, we've, from a long time ago, you know, we have the structure that's in place. You walk into the structure, whether it be amateur or not, has no relevance. You walk into the structure, 2 to 3 years down the line, you're gonna be at this level. So we built the structure, and then we built it into tiers. So we have our A, B, C, and D tier fighters, and obviously we got to the point of EFC bottlenecking everything. So we got X amount of fighters in this division. How are we gonna get past that?
Sure.
So the next step is, if you come to FFM, understand this is the hierarchy. If you fall into that hierarchy, you might not get to the point fast enough where you need to be, because we have fighters that are there already.
Yeah.
So you need to bear in mind that you can either then sit on the EFC circuit and, you know, eke out a fight and a win every now and then, or you can fight to the ambition of fighting overseas and then moving on, and then getting your frequency of fights that you want to do from there. So we've been planning around that. So even though everybody's always come to us and said, you know, but you're going to bottleneck this division, we always knew that it would pan out because of how we planned our fighters in stages from an amateur scene all the way through the ranks. Now we're getting to a point where we are ready to let Chad, Boyd, DeMart, potentially JP, you know, go spread their wings. So that takes 4 of the top 4 divisions are now open.
Sure.
And we still got our second tier fighters now, and I'm not saying second tier from a quality perspective, I'm just saying second tier from a planning perspective, hierarchy perspective, that it's open for them now. So there's still a lot to do. And myself and Rich are not really worrying about that yet, bottlenecking any division, because it hasn't really happened. At one stage we had like, number one and number two positions, or number two, number three positions through most of the divisions in the EFC. But now we're ready to transition. We've done a lot of work. We've spent a lot of time, done a lot of work networking, creating contacts, getting managers, contacting promotion is now starting to pan out for us. But if a fighter wants to, surround themselves with the highest quality of training, with the highest concentration of high-level elite fighters on the African continent, then that is the vision. So that is what we're creating. It's not about anything else. So if you walk in, we explain the structure the way it is, and symbiotically things have panned out and worked out to this point. And we've just got to the point where we're like, okay, if this happens, we'll solve it when it happens. And most of the guys, once again, it comes back to the team dynamic. We've got guys that are so entwined with each other's lives and so entwined and care for each other emotionally so much, and have each other's well-being at heart, that the community decisions around fights have all been natural.
Okay.
It was never a case of, I need to do this because this person is here. Everything has worked out naturally to this point.
Okay. Well, that's every bit of detail we can get out of FFM for the moment. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground there. It was a very interesting perspective. And just, I like to end with taking out a moment just to, I don't know if guys like yourself ever hear it enough, just to say thank you for everything that you've done for MMA in the country. As a fan, I think we like I've said before, you sit and you see these guys up in this, in the big bright lights, and so many people get to experience and see and understand everything that goes on to lead up to that moment. Yeah. It's documented, but I don't think it's documented enough in South Africa. And for the work you guys are doing, for the continuation of MMA to get us into that next level, you guys broke ground, and you're continuing to break ground for the future. And from a fan's perspective, thank you for that. And thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it, and all your insights, man.
Oh, thank you very much, bro. It's great to hear that appreciation. It's always nice to hear, and motivates us to keep aspiring to be the best that we can be. And and in hindsight, well, not in hindsight, if there's anything I can say, it's just, we appreciate the support. Just 100%. Keep support any MMA gym, any MMA gym that uplifts the community and invests in people, support them,
Sure.
In one way, shape or form, and just from grassroots level, just support them and show that you care, Not every MMA fighter is some sort of hooligan, but actually, some sort of family man that's trying to make life better for a couple of youngsters. And if you can see past that, then there's a lot of rich things, that you can get involved in the sense of from a spiritual level and from a martial arts level, you can be involved in. So thanks for the support. We appreciate it, bro. It's awesome.
Anytime, man. And all the best for your immediate future and the long term. And the FFM guys will be keeping an eye closely to see how it all unfolds. And that's that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, bro.
Sweet.